Boy finds a suitcase full of money, but when he sees it belongs to his missing grandfather, Tyler Johnson couldn't stop trembling as he held the old photograph between his fingers. The image showed his grandfather, Walter, smiling, but now that same face stared back at him from a photo glued inside the lid of the brown leather suitcase he had found. The 12-year-old had climbed onto the neighbor's roof to retrieve his soccer ball when he noticed a loose shingle. Out of curiosity, he peeked through the gap and spotted the suitcase hidden between the wooden beams. He never imagined that opening it would reveal stacks and stacks of $50 and $100 bills, all neatly bundled with rubber bands. "Mom won't believe this," Tyler murmured, still in shock. But when he saw his grandfather's photo, his stomach twisted. Walter had disappeared 3 months ago, leaving the family in complete despair. His grandmother Margaret was hospitalized at the public hospital with heart problems, and his mother Jennifer worked day and night as a cleaner to try and pay the mounting medical bills. Tyler quickly closed the suitcase and carefully climbed down from the roof. His legs wobbled as he walked to his home, a simple 2-story house in the Hope Heights neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. The weight of the suitcase seemed to grow with each step, not because of the money, but because of the secret it carried. "Tyler, where were you?" Jennifer shouted from the kitchen window. "Your shirt is filthy." "Just playing outside, Mom," he replied, hiding the suitcase behind his back. Jennifer came downstairs and stopped in front of her son. At 42, she looked much older. Her brown hair was always tied in a messy bun, and her calloused hands told the story of years of hard work. "You're acting strange today," she said, studying the boy's tense face. "Did something happen?" "No, Mom, I'm just tired." Jennifer sighed and went back to the kitchen. Tyler took the chance to rush upstairs to his room and hide the suitcase under his bed. His heart pounded so loudly it felt like everyone in the house could hear it. That night, during dinner, rice, beans, and a small piece of chicken, Jennifer talked about the hospital bills that kept piling up. "I don't know what else to do, Tyler," she said, pushing her food around absently. "The doctor said your grandmother needs a new medication, but it costs almost $1,000 a month." Tyler nearly choked on his food. $1,000. There was far more than that in the suitcase hidden in his room. It could solve all their problems in an instant, but something stopped him from speaking. His grandfather Walter's photo wouldn't leave his mind. "I'll get a job, Mom," he said, trying to sound confident. "You're 12 years old, sweetheart. Your only responsibility is school." But Tyler barely slept that night. He tossed and turned, thinking about the money beneath his bed. Sometimes he'd get up and peek under it, making sure the suitcase was still there. It wasn't a dream. The next morning, before leaving for school, Tyler decided to inspect the suitcase's contents more carefully. When his mother went to take a shower, he grabbed it and opened it again. Besides the money and the photo, there was a yellowed envelope with the name Walter Johnson handwritten on it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. Inside the envelope, Tyler found a handwritten letter. The shaky handwriting was unmistakably his grandfather's. "If anyone finds this money, know that it is the fruit of 40 years of honest work. I saved every penny thinking of my family's future, but I didn't have the courage to use it when they needed it most. I'm a coward who ran when I should have stayed. The money belongs to Margaret and Jennifer. They deserve better than a proud old man like me." Tyler felt his eyes fill with tears. His grandfather was alive, but had chosen to disappear. Why? The letter didn't explain where he was or why he had made that terrible decision. Throughout class, Tyler couldn't focus. His teacher, Mrs. Davidson, a woman in her 60s who had taught at the school for decades, noticed something was wrong. "Tyler, are you okay?" she asked after class. "You seem worried." "I'm fine, Mom. You know, sometimes talking helps. If you want, you can stay after class tomorrow." Tyler thanked her and quickly left. He couldn't tell anyone about the suitcase, at least not yet. He needed to understand the situation better. On his way home, he passed the neighbor's house where he had found the suitcase. It was an old building with peeling walls and an overgrown yard. It belonged to Mr. Richard, a man in his 50s who worked at an auto repair shop and traveled often for work. Tyler always thought it was strange that Mr. Richard left the house empty for so long, but he had never questioned it. Now, looking at the property, he began to wonder why his grandfather had hidden the money there of all places. When he got home, he found his mother crying in the kitchen, holding a hospital bill. "What's wrong, Mum?" "Your grandmother had complications last night," Jennifer said, wiping her eyes. "They need to operate, but the hospital is asking for a $5,000 deposit." $5,000? Tyler knew there was much more than that in the suitcase, but he still couldn't reveal the secret. Something told him he needed to find his grandfather first. "Mum, can I visit Grandma today?" "Of course, sweetheart. She'd love your company." Memorial General Hospital was a 40-minute bus ride from Tyler's house. It was an old building, with long hallways and the distinct smell of disinfectant. Margaret was in the geriatric wing on the 3rd floor. When Tyler entered the room, he found his grandmother sleeping. At 71, Margaret had always been a strong woman, raising 4 children while working as a seamstress. Now, hooked up to machines, she looked so fragile. "Grandma?" Tyler called softly. Margaret opened her eyes slowly and smiled when she saw her grandson. "My dear boy, how are you?" "I'm fine, Grandma. And you?" "Oh, sweetheart, I'm tired. So tired." They talked for a few minutes about school and Tyler's friends, but his grandmother soon grew drowsy from the medication. "Grandma, do you miss Grandpa Walter?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Every day, my love. I don't understand why he left like that without a word. 47 years of marriage and he just disappeared. Maybe he had his reasons." "What reasons could be more important than family, Tyler?" she asked, squeezing his hand. "When you truly love someone, you don't abandon them when they need you most." Tyler left the hospital with an even heavier heart. His grandmother was suffering not just from illness, but from her husband's abandonment, and he had the key at home to ease at least part of that pain. That night, Tyler made a decision. He would return to the neighbor's house to look for more clues about his grandfather. Maybe there was something that could explain Walter's whereabouts. He waited until his mother fell asleep and slipped out through his bedroom window. The street was quiet, lit only by the flickering old streetlights. Mr. Richard's house was completely dark. Tyler climbed onto the roof again and lowered himself through the gap in the tiles. This time he brought a small flashlight to examine the place more carefully. The attic was small and dusty, full of old boxes and furniture covered in sheets. In one of the boxes, he found old tools and some yellowed documents. Among them was a work ID in the name of Walter Johnson. Tyler was confused. Why was your grandfather's work permit there? He kept searching and found more documents, payment receipts, invoices, and a dismissal letter dated 3 months ago, exactly when Walter had disappeared. "So, Grandpa worked for Mr. Richard," Tyler murmured. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a key in the front door. Someone was entering the house. Tyler quickly turned off the flashlight and froze, trying not to make a sound. "Darn it! Where's that suitcase?" He heard a man's voice grumbling downstairs. It was Mr. Richard. Tyler felt his blood run cold. The man was looking for the suitcase he had found. Did that mean Richard knew about the money? Footsteps echoed through the house as Richard rummaged through furniture and cabinets. Tyler remained hidden in the attic, praying the man wouldn't come up to check the space. "Walter, you stubborn old man," Richard muttered. "Where did you hide my money?" "My money?" Tyler grew even more confused. Richard was looking for the money as if it were his, not his grandfather's. But Walter's letter clearly stated the money was from his work. After nearly an hour of tearing through the house, Richard left, slamming the door hard. Tyler waited a few more minutes before venturing out of the attic. His heart pounded uncontrollably as he made his way home. The next day, Tyler couldn't focus at school. During recess, he sat alone under a tree, trying to sort out his thoughts. His teacher, Mrs. Davidson, approached him. "Tyler, you've seemed worried these past few days. Are you sure you don't want to talk?" Tyler looked at her. Mrs. Davidson had always been kind to him, and his mother often said she was someone to trust. Maybe she could help him make sense of the situation. "Mrs. Davidson, if you knew a secret that could help your family but might also hurt someone, what would you do?" Mrs. Davidson sat beside him on the grass. Well, it depends on the kind of secret. But usually the truth, even if it hurts at first, is always better than a lie that drags on. What if this secret involved a lot of money? Money can solve practical problems, but it doesn't fix matters of the heart, Tyler. Sometimes what people need most isn't money, but understanding and forgiveness. His teacher's words echoed in Tyler's mind for the rest of the day. Maybe the problem wasn't just about the money, but the hurt feelings caused by his grandfather's departure. That afternoon, Tyler decided to visit his grandmother at the hospital again. Margaret was awake and seemed a little better. "Hi, Grandma. How are you feeling?" "A bit better, sweetheart. The doctors said the surgery might be postponed if I respond well to the new medication." Tyler felt momentary relief, but he knew the financial issue remained. "Grandma, can I ask you something about Grandpa Walter?" "Of course, dear." "Do you know where he worked before he disappeared?" Margaret sighed. "Your grandfather was always very private about his work. He said he worked at a repair shop, but never wanted to take me there. Said it wasn't a place for women. Did you know he was saving money?" I suspected. Sometimes I'd see him counting bills and putting them in an envelope, but when I asked, he'd change the subject. "Your grandfather was too proud to accept help, even from his own family." Tyler began to understand his grandfather better. Walter was a hard-working, proud man who likely felt ashamed he couldn't afford his wife's treatment with his monthly earnings. "Grandma, if Grandpa Walter came back today, would you forgive him?" Margaret squeezed her grandson's hand tightly. "Tyler, when you love someone for so long, you learn that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain, but choosing love even when the person fails. I would forgive your grandfather, yes, but I'd need to understand why he did what he did." That night, Tyler made a decision. He would look for his grandfather. He needed to find him and convince him to come home. But first, he had to learn more about the relationship between Walter and Mr. Richard. The next day after school, Tyler went to the garage where Mr. Richard worked. It was a small, dirty place where several men repaired cars and motorcycles. Tyler hid behind a pole and watched Richard working. "Mr. Richard," Tyler heard another mechanic call out, "that old helper of yours still hasn't shown up." "Walter?" "No, he vanished out of nowhere 3 months ago, and he was such a hard worker. 40 years with me and never missed a single day." "Did he say anything before disappearing?" "Nothing. Just that the week before he seemed a little off, worried about something. But he was private, never talked about personal problems." Tyler was surprised. 40 years working for the same person. That explained why Walter trusted hiding the money in Richard's house, but it still didn't explain why Richard was searching for the suitcase as if the money were his. He decided to approach the garage. "Excuse me," Tyler said timidly. "Hey, kid, what do you want here?" Richard asked, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. "I'm Walter Johnson's grandson. I wanted to know if you've heard anything about him." Richard's face changed completely. He tensed up and looked around before answering. "No, kid. Your grandfather disappeared without a word. If you hear anything about him, let me know, all right?" "Why?" Because I'm worried about him, of course. He worked with me his whole life." But Tyler sensed there was more to Richard's concern. The man was clearly nervous, his hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Richard, did my grandfather save money?" "How would I know? Everyone minds their own business. Now get out of here, kid. This isn't a place for children." Tyler left the garage with more questions than answers. It was clear Richard was hiding something, but he couldn't figure out exactly what. That night, Jennifer got a call from the hospital. Margaret had taken a turn for the worse and needed emergency surgery. The operation would cost $15,000. "We don't have that kind of money, Tyler," Jennifer said, crying desperately. "I'll try to get a loan, but with my salary, no bank will approve it." Tyler couldn't take it anymore. He ran upstairs to his room and grabbed the suitcase from under the bed. He rushed back down and placed it on the kitchen table in front of his mother. "Mom, I found this." Jennifer stopped crying and stared at the suitcase, confused. "What is this, Tyler?" "Open it." When Jennifer opened the suitcase and saw all that money, she was in shock. Her legs wobbled and she had to sit down. "Oh my God, where did this come from?" "It's Grandpa Walter's, Mom." Tyler showed her the photo and the letter. Jennifer read the letter 3 times before she could process the information. "Your grandfather is alive?" she asked, disbelieving. "He is, Mom, but I don't know where." "And why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted to find him first. I wanted to understand why he left." Jennifer hugged her son tightly. "Tyler, this changes everything. We can get your grandmother the surgery, but we also need to find your grandfather. He needs to know we don't judge him." "There's something strange, Mom. Mr. Richard, the owner of the house where I found the suitcase, is looking for it. I think he knows something about Grandpa." "Richard Miller? I know him by sight. He always seemed like an honest man." "I don't know, Mom. He was talking like the money was his." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Jennifer took part of the money to the hospital and paid the deposit for Margaret's surgery. But before telling her mother-in-law about the discovery, she decided she needed to understand the situation better. "Tyler, let's talk to this Richard today in the afternoon." "Mom, I think he might be dangerous." "Don't worry, we'll just ask a few questions." At 3 in the afternoon, mother and son went to Richard's house. He was washing his car in the garage when he saw them approaching. "Good afternoon, Mr. Richard," Jennifer greeted politely. "Good afternoon, Jennifer. Hi, kid, what brings you here?" "We'd like to talk about my father-in-law, Walter Johnson." Richard's face turned serious. "I already told the boy I don't know anything about Walter." "Mr. Richard, with all due respect, we know you've been looking for a suitcase that belonged to my father-in-law." Richard stopped washing the car and stared at them. "Who told you that?" "My son heard you searching for it in your own house." "Listen here, Jennifer. This is getting complicated. You'd better stay out of it." "Why, Mr. Richard? What are you hiding?" Richard sighed and threw the hose on the ground. All right. Let's talk, but come inside." Richard's living room was simple, with old furniture and tools scattered around. He motioned for them to sit on the couch. "Look, Walter worked for me for 40 years. He was my right-hand man. More than that, he was like a brother. About 3 years ago, my shop was going through financial trouble." "And then?" Jennifer asked. "Walter offered to lend me money. It was his life savings, almost $20,000. He said I could pay him back when I could." Tyler and Jennifer exchanged glances. The story was starting to make sense. "I managed to save the shop with that money," Richard continued, "and over the last 2 years, I've been paying your grandfather back little by little. I've already returned half. And the rest? That's the problem. 3 months ago, I finally saved up the $10,000 I still owed Walter. I went to pay him, but he refused." "Refused?" "He said he didn't need the money, that I could keep it, but I insisted. Walter was always very proud, and I knew he was lying. Margaret was sick, and they needed money for treatment." Richard stood up and began pacing the room. "I forced the money into his hand and told him our debt was settled, but the next week Walter disappeared. And the money I gave him vanished too. It's hidden somewhere in my house." "That's why you were looking for the suitcase," Tyler said. "Exactly. It's not greed, kid, it's responsibility. That money is rightfully yours. Walter worked honestly for 40 years to save that amount." Jennifer felt relieved, but there was still a missing piece to the puzzle. "Mr. Richard, do you have any idea where my father-in-law might be?" "No clue, but I can tell you one thing. Walter ran away out of shame, not cowardice. He felt humiliated for not being able to afford his wife's treatment." "That's ridiculous," Jennifer said. Margaret never blamed him for anything. "I know, Jennifer, but you know your father-in-law. He always wanted to handle everything on his own. Accepting help, even from family, was like admitting defeat to him." Tyler thought for a moment. "Mr. Richard, my grandfather left a letter saying the money was for my grandma and my mom. Did he want you to keep the money?" "No, kid. Walter gave the money back to me specifically so I could give it to you if anything happened to him. So he planned to disappear?" "I think so. The last week he worked with me, he was very withdrawn. I think he had already made up his mind." Jennifer started crying. "How are we going to find him? He could be anywhere in the country. Calm down, Mom, said Tyler, holding her hand. Grandpa didn't go far. I bet he's around here somewhere, keeping an eye on the family without being seen. Why do you think that? Because if he really wanted to leave the family, he wouldn't have left the letter or the money. He ran away, but he couldn't bring himself to stay gone completely. Richard nodded in agreement. The boy's right. Walter loves you all too much to go too far. That night, Tyler lay awake thinking about all the places his grandfather could be hiding. He knew Walter's habits well. He liked fishing at the town lake, visited the central square to play dominoes with his friends, and always talked about how he'd love to have a small garden. The next morning, Tyler woke up early and went out to search for his grandfather. He started at the lake where Walter used to fish on weekends. There was no sign of him there. Then he went to the central square. Some of Walter's friends were playing dominoes, but when Tyler asked about him, they all said they hadn't seen him in months. "Your grandfather really vanished, kid," said Mr. Frank, one of the domino players. "Disappeared without saying goodbye to anyone. Does anyone have any idea where he might be?" "Well, if I were you, I'd check the senior center that opened last year. Walter always talked about wanting to volunteer there." The New Horizons Senior Center was a 20-minute bus ride from downtown. It was a simple but well-kept place where seniors in need received basic health care and participated in social activities. Tyler walked in and approached the reception desk. "Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm looking for my grandfather, Walter Johnson. He might be volunteering here." The receptionist, a friendly middle-aged woman, smiled. "Walter? Of course. He takes care of our community garden. He's a wonderful person. But I didn't know he had family." Tyler's heart raced. "Is he here now?" "Yes, he is. He's probably in the garden behind the building." Tyler followed the directions and came to a small but well-tended garden where several seniors were growing vegetables and herbs. And there he was, Walter Johnson, kneeling in the dirt planting tomato seedlings. His grandfather had lost weight and his grey hair was whiter, but it was unmistakably him. Tyler stood still for a moment, unsure how to approach. "Grandpa?" he called softly. Walter looked up, and when he saw his grandson, he turned as white as a sheet. The seedlings fell from his hands. "Tyler, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you, Grandpa." Walter stood quickly and glanced around, as if searching for an escape route. "You shouldn't be here, boy. Go home." "I'm not leaving, Grandpa. Not until we talk." "There's nothing to talk about. Go take care of your mother and grandmother." "That's exactly what I want to talk about. I found your suitcase, Grandpa." Walter grew even paler. "What suitcase?" "The one with the money you hid at Mr. Richards' house. And I found your letter, too." His grandfather sat on a wooden bench and buried his face in his hands. "You weren't supposed to find that. But I did. And now I need to understand why you left the family." "I didn't leave anyone. I just couldn't keep being a burden to you all." Tyler sat beside his grandfather. "A burden? Grandpa, you were never a burden. You're the hardest working person I know. Tyler, your grandmother was dying, and I didn't have the money to save her. 40 years of work, and I couldn't even save the woman I loved." "But you had the money, Grandpa. It was in the suitcase." "That money was what I'd loaned to Richard, and when he paid me back, I felt even worse. It meant that even to get money to save my wife, I depended on the generosity of others." Tyler finally understood the painful logic that had led his grandfather to run away. Wounded pride had spoken louder than love for family. "Grandpa, Grandma didn't need your money. She needed you." "That's not true, Tyler. Money solves practical problems. Love doesn't pay hospital bills." "You're wrong. We took the money from the suitcase and paid for Grandma's surgery. She's fine now. But you know what? The whole time in the hospital, she only talked about you. No matter how much medicine the doctors gave her, she didn't get better because her heart was broken." Walter began to cry silently. "Tyler, I'm a proud, stubborn old man. I don't know how to go home after doing something like this. Just show up, Grandpa. Grandma is waiting. And your mother, she must be very angry with me. She's worried. We all are. The family isn't complete without you." They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the other seniors tending the garden. Finally, Walter spoke. Tyler, can you forgive me? I'm not the one who needs to forgive you, Grandpa. But yes, I forgive you. And I'm sure Grandma and Mom will too. How did you find me? I looked everywhere I knew you liked to be, and I thought, if I were Grandpa, where would I go to feel useful even far from family? Walter smiled for the first time. You know me well, boy. Grandpa, do you want to go home today? I'm afraid, Tyler. Afraid of how you'll react. Afraid I won't be forgiven. Then let's take it slow. How about we visit Grandma at the hospital first? She's much better after the surgery. Walter thought for a moment and nodded. All right, but you have to promise me one thing. What? If your grandmother doesn't want to see me, you bring me back here and never look for me again. Okay, Grandpa. But I know that won't happen. The walk to the hospital was tense. Walter was visibly nervous, adjusting his old shirt and running his hands through his hair. Tyler tried to reassure him, but he was also anxious to see how the reunion would go. Grandpa, before we see Grandma, I need to tell you something. Mom knows about the suitcase and about you being alive. How did she take it? She was worried, but not angry. She just wants to understand why you did it. And Richard? Everything's cleared up with him. He explained about the loan. Actually, he was looking for the suitcase to return the money to us. Walter sighed in relief. Richard has always been a good man. He didn't deserve to get caught up in this mess. When they arrived at the hospital, Tyler asked his grandfather to wait in the cafeteria while he spoke to Margaret first. He needed to prepare his grandmother for the meeting. Grandma, how are you feeling? Much better, my dear. The doctor said I can go home next week. That's great. Grandma, I have a surprise for you. What surprise? But first I need to know, do you still love Grandpa Walter? Margaret squeezed her grandson's hand tightly. Tyler, I've loved your grandfather for 50 years. That doesn't change because of a mistake he made. Then would you like to see him? Of course, but he's not here, sweetheart. Yes, he is, Grandma. He's downstairs in the cafeteria. Should I call him? Margaret was stunned. Her hands began to tremble and her eyes filled with tears. Is it true, Tyler? Is your grandfather really here? Yes, but he's afraid you don't want to see him. Go get him now, my dear. Now. Tyler rushed down to the cafeteria and found Walter drinking coffee, clearly nervous. Well, how did she take it? She wants to see you right now. Are you sure? I'm sure, Grandpa. Let's go. The walk to the elevator felt like an eternity. Walter stopped every few steps, too nervous to continue. Tyler practically had to push him into the elevator. Grandpa, everything will be okay. What if she doesn't want to live with me anymore? What if she decides I'm a terrible husband? That won't happen. Grandma loves you. When they reached the hospital room door, Walter stopped again. Tyler, I can't do this. Yes, you can. Grandma's waiting. Tyler opened the door and gently guided his grandfather inside. Margaret was sitting on the bed, smoothing her hair and trying to look presentable. When she saw her husband, she began to cry. Walter? Hi, Margaret. They stared at each other for a moment that felt like an eternity. Tyler stayed by the door, too moved to step away. Are you okay? Margaret asked. I am. And you? How are you feeling? Better now. Walter slowly approached the bed. Margaret, I know I don't deserve forgiveness after what I did, but I need you to know I love you more than anything in this life. Then why did you leave? Because I'm a proud fool who couldn't admit I needed help. Because I felt like a failure as a husband for not being able to care for you. Margaret reached out her hand. Walter, come here. He took his wife's hand and sat on the edge of the bed. Do you forgive me? Walter Johnson, I've lived 50 years with you. I watched you work through sun and rain to provide for our family. I saw you care for our children when they were sick. I saw you cry when our grandchildren were born. Do you really think I'd stop loving you over one moment of weakness? But I abandoned you when you needed me most. And now you're back, that's what matters. Walter leaned in and kissed his wife's forehead. Tyler, overcome with emotion, quietly slipped out to give them privacy. In the hallway, he met his mother rushing toward him. Tyler, Richard told me you went looking for your grandfather. Did you find him? I did, Mom. He's in there with Grandma. Jennifer paused and looked at the door. How did it go? It was beautiful. They love each other so much. And how is he? Regretful, ashamed, but relieved. Jennifer took a deep breath. Can I go in? Of course, Mum. They'll be happy to see you. When Jennifer entered, she found her in-laws whispering softly, hands clasped. Walter looked up and saw her. Jennifer, Dad, are you all right? Walter stood and hugged his daughter-in-law. Jennifer, forgive me for letting you all down like that. You're already forgiven, Dad. What matters is you're back. But I caused so much pain. Dad, you made a mistake, but you're not a bad person. We all make mistakes when we're desperate. Margaret smiled, watching the family reunited. Now my heart is whole again. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the hospital, talking and reconnecting. Walter shared about the 3 months he'd spent at New Horizons Senior Center, tending the garden and helping other seniors. He explained he'd found some purpose there, but could never fill the emptiness of being away from his family. Dad, you can still volunteer, Jennifer said, but now as someone with a family who supports you, not as someone running from it. That's true, Margaret agreed. Walter, you've always had a green thumb. What if we started a small garden in our backyard? I'd like that, Walter said, smiling. I've always wanted to. By the time they left the hospital, dusk had fallen. Tyler walked between his grandparents, holding each of their hands. Jennifer followed, happy to see the family whole again. Grandpa, Tyler said, are you coming home today? If your grandmother will have me, yes. Of course I will, Margaret said. Our home isn't the same without you. That evening, Jennifer prepared a special dinner to celebrate her father-in-law's return. Richard was also invited and brought the remaining money that was still at his house. Walter, here's what's yours, said Richard, handing him an envelope. Richard, you've already paid me back everything. No, my friend. There was still some hidden in your suitcase. Tyler found it all. Walter looked at his grandson with admiration. Tyler, how did you know where to look? Instinct, Grandpa, and a lot of determination. During dinner, they talked about their plans for the future. Margaret would be discharged from the hospital the following week, and Walter would return to work part-time at Richard's shop. With the money recovered, they could set aside a small emergency fund, and Jennifer could reduce her workload. Dad, Jennifer said, did you learn anything from this experience? I learned that pride can be dangerous when it keeps us from accepting love and help from family. And I learned that running from problems is never the solution. And I learned, said Margaret, that no matter how long you've lived with someone, you can always discover new things about them. Walter, I never knew you felt so pressured to handle everything alone. That's just how I was raised, Walter explained. My father always said a real man doesn't ask for help. Nonsense, Richard said. A real man takes care of his family and accepts help when he needs it. Walter, you've worked for 40 years. That gives you the right to accept support when necessary. Tyler, who had been quietly listening to the adults, finally spoke. Grandpa, can I ask you something? Of course, my boy. When you were at the senior center, did you think about us? Every day, Tyler. I'd even walk down the street sometimes just to see you all from a distance. Then why didn't you come back sooner? Walter thought for a moment. Because the longer I stayed away, the harder it got to admit I'd made a mistake. It was like I'd dug myself into such a deep hole I couldn't climb out. But we could have helped you out of it. Now I know that, my boy, now I know. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The following week, Margaret was discharged from the hospital. Walter was eager to care for her at home, but also nervous, unsure if he could be the husband she deserved after everything that had happened. Margaret, are you sure you want me back home? And he asked as they packed her things in the hospital room. Walter, stop questioning yourself. Of course I do. Just promise me one thing. Next time you have a problem, tell me. No matter how hard it is, we'll face it together. I promise. The first days at home were an adjustment. Walter was different, more attentive and affectionate, but also more insecure. Margaret noticed her husband was trying to make up for his 3-month absence by being overly accommodating. "Walter, you don't need to bring me a glass of water every 5 minutes," she said, laughing. "I'm fine. I just want to make sure you're comfortable." "I am comfortable, but you're not. Sit here beside me and stop pacing." Tyler watched his grandparents' readjustment with interest. He could see his grandfather was trying too hard to be perfect, as if afraid of making another mistake that might push him away from the family again. "Grandpa," Tyler said one day when they were alone in the kitchen, "you don't have to walk on eggshells." "What do you mean?" "You're trying too hard to be perfect. Grandma just wants you to be the same old grandpa." "But what if I mess up again?" "Then we'll talk it out and fix it, like a normal family does." Walter smiled and ruffled his grandson's hair. "When did you get so wise?" "Ever since I found a suitcase full of money and had to solve a family mystery." "Speaking of which, Tyler, how did you know I was at the senior center?" "I asked your friends at the park, and Mr. Frank gave me the hint. But mostly I thought, if I were Grandpa and wanted to feel useful, where would I go? You really do know me well. Grandpa, can I go with you to visit the garden at the center?" "Of course. I'd love to show you what I planted there." That weekend, Tyler accompanied his grandfather to the New Horizons Senior Center. Walter had decided to keep volunteering there twice a week, but now as someone with a solid family to come home to. "Mr. Walter," several people called out when he arrived. "So good to see you again. Everyone, I'd like you to meet my grandson, Tyler. So this is the detective who found you," said Mrs. Williams, an 80-year-old woman who helped with crafts. "Detective?" Tyler asked, laughing. "Your grandfather talked about you a lot," Mrs. Williams explained. "Said you were clever and determined. Seems he was right." Tyler spent the afternoon helping in the garden and getting to know the friends his grandfather had made during his 3 months of exile. He realized that despite the pain it had caused the family, that time had also been important for Walter. "Grandpa, you learned some important things here, didn't you?" "I did. I learned that I can still be useful even as I get older. I learned that other people have complicated family problems too. And most of all, I learned that running away doesn't solve anything. And now? Now I know I can help people here without abandoning my family. I can have both." On the way home, they stopped at the Central Park, where Walter's friends were playing dominoes. When they saw their old friend approaching, they paused the game. "Walter, where have you been, man?" asked Mr. Frank. "It's a long story," Walter replied, sitting down at the table. "We've got time," said Mr. Charles, another domino companion. Walter gave them a shortened version of the story, admitting he'd run away out of pride and fear. His friends listened without judgment. "Walter, we've all made mistakes in life," said Mr. Frank. "What matters is owning up to them and making things right." "That's true," agreed Mr. Charles, "and you're lucky to have a grandson like this boy here. How many 12-year-olds would have the determination to search for their missing grandfather?" Tyler was embarrassed by the praise, but proud to have helped reunite the family. That evening at dinner, Margaret made an announcement. "Walter, I've made a decision." "What decision?" "I want to sell the house and buy a smaller one, but with a bigger yard." "Why?" "So you can have the garden you've always wanted, and because a smaller house will be easier to manage as we get older." Walter was moved. "Margaret, are you sure? This house has so many memories. And we'll take those memories with us to the new home. Besides, I want to start a new chapter in our lives, one where we solve problems as a family, not alone." Jennifer supported the idea. "Dad, Mom, if you'd like, I can help look for a new house. And with the money from the suitcase, you can put down a good payment. And I can help pick the plants for the garden," Tyler said excitedly. "Then it's settled," said Margaret. "We'll find a new home." The search became a family activity. Every weekend, Walter, Margaret, Jennifer, and Tyler went out to visit properties. They wanted something simple, but with a spacious yard where Walter could plant. After 3 weeks, they found the perfect house, smaller than the old one, but with a huge backyard full of fruit trees. The house was in the same neighborhood, so they wouldn't lose touch with their neighbors and friends. "This is the one," said Margaret as soon as she saw the property. "Are you sure?" asked Walter. "Absolutely, I can see myself being happy here." "And I can see myself planting in this backyard," Walter said with a smile. The move happened 2 months later. Richard helped with the transportation, and several neighbors from their old street came to say goodbye to the family. It was emotional, but also hopeful. In the new house, Walter immediately started planning the garden. Tyler helped him every afternoon after school, learning about plants and farming. "Grandpa, why do you like planting so much?" "Because planting teaches patience, Tyler. You put a seed in the ground, take care of it every day, and after a while, it becomes a plant that can feed the family. It's like nurturing relationships." "How so?" "Relationships also need to be cared for every day. If you neglect them, they die. If you tend to them with love, they grow and bear fruit." "Like our family?" "Exactly. I neglected our family for 3 months and it almost died. Now I need to care for it every day so it can bear fruit again." Walter's garden quickly became the neighborhood attraction. Neighbors came to admire the plants and ask for gardening advice. Margaret was proud to see her husband sharing his knowledge. "Walter's different," Jennifer commented to her mother one day. "More confident in himself." "It's because he found balance," Margaret replied. "He's still useful and productive, but now he knows he doesn't have to carry all the problems alone." "Do you think he won't run away again if another problem comes up?" "I'm sure he won't." Walter learned that running away caused more pain than facing the problems ever would. A few months later, the family received an unexpected visit. It was the administrator from New Horizons Senior Center, coming with a special invitation. "Mr. Walter, we'd like to offer you a paid position as coordinator of our community garden. Some donors were impressed with your work." Walter looked at Margaret before answering. "It's a tempting offer, but I need to talk to my family first." "Of course, take all the time you need." After the administrator left, the family gathered to discuss the proposal. "Dad, what do you think of the offer?" Jennifer asked. "I like the idea, but I don't want to make a decision that affects the family without consulting you all." "Walter, it's a great opportunity," Margaret said. "You can do what you love and get paid for it." "And the best part," Tyler added, "is that Grandpa won't be running away from the family but working with their support." "So you think I should accept?" "We do," they all answered in unison. Walter accepted the offer and began working part-time as the community garden coordinator. It was work that gave him purpose and satisfaction without taking him away from his family. A year after the family reunion, they threw a party to celebrate Walter and Margaret's wedding anniversary, 51 years together, and everyone agreed it was worth celebrating. Richard was invited, along with their domino friends, old and new neighbors, and several people from the senior center. The party was held in the backyard of their new home, decorated with flowers and plants from Walter's garden. During the party, Tyler gave a speech that moved everyone. "A year ago, our family was broken. Grandma was sick, Mom was desperate over the bills, and Grandpa had disappeared. But sometimes when things get toughest, that's when we discover what we're really made of. I've learned that a family isn't perfect, but it's resilient. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing love even when it's hard. And I learned that sometimes to solve a problem, you need the courage to face it, even when running away seems easier. My grandpa taught me that real men take care of their families and accept help when they need it. My grandma taught me that true love overcomes pride and fear. And my mom taught me that strength isn't about being perfect, but about never giving up on the people we love. So I want to toast to our family. Messy, complicated, but full of love." Everyone raised their glasses, many with tears in their eyes. Walter walked over to his grandson and hugged him. "Thank you, Tyler, for finding me, for not giving up on me, and for teaching me that coming home is sometimes the bravest thing we can do. Thank you for coming back, Grandpa." The party went on late into the night, with music, food from Walter's garden, and plenty of stories being shared. It wasn't just a celebration of their anniversary, but of a family's ability to heal and grow stronger after hardship. That night, after all the guests had left, the family sat together in the backyard under the stars. "Margaret," Walter said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think our family is stronger now than before I made that mistake?" Margaret thought for a moment. "I think so. Before we loved each other, but we didn't talk about the hard things. Now we know we can face anything together." "That's true," Jennifer agreed. "Before, everyone tried to handle their problems alone. Now we know it's easier when we share our worries." "And I learned," Tyler said, "that sometimes people do wrong things, not because they're bad, but because they're scared or confused. What matters is talking and trying to understand." Walter looked at his gathered family and felt deep gratitude. He had nearly lost everything to pride and fear, but the determination of a 12-year-old grandson had saved not just his family, but his own soul. "Tyler," he said, "when you grow up and have your own family, remember one thing. No matter how hard a problem seems, it's always better to face it with the people you love than to run and face it alone." "I'll remember, Grandpa." Years passed, and the story of the hidden suitcase became a legend in the Johnson family. Tyler grew into a responsible and determined young man, qualities many credited to his experience reuniting his family at just 12 years old. Walter kept working at the senior center until he was 80, finally retiring to focus on his personal garden. Margaret lived to 85, always proud of the husband who had learned to accept help and the grandson who never gave up on family. Jennifer eventually started her own cleaning business, using some of the suitcase money as seed capital. She often told her employees the story of how her family came back together, emphasizing the power of determination and forgiveness. Richard remained a close family friend for life, always reminding everyone that sometimes the people we least expect are the ones who help us most when times are tough. And the suitcase? It stayed in Margaret's closet, not for the money, but as a reminder that family secrets, kept out of fear or pride, can do more harm than the very things we try to hide. The house with the big backyard became the family's gathering spot for holidays and birthdays. Walter's garden grew and flourished, providing not just food for the family, but seeds and plants for neighbors and friends. But perhaps the most important legacy of the suitcase's story was the lesson Tyler carried for the rest of his life: that true families aren't perfect, but they are capable of forgiving, growing, and becoming stronger through hardships. The end of the story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story? Do you believe Tyler made the right choices in seeking out his grandfather? Have you ever been in situations where pride almost destroyed important relationships? Share your experiences in the comments. I love reading your personal stories. Leave a like if this story touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more moving narratives like this one.